You're listening to Redesigning Reality with Dylan Charles and Jeff Anthony.
Recording.
Cool, it's recording. We are recording. We are live in 2018. I don't even know what the date is, but this is Redesigning Reality. I'm Dylan Charles with Jeff Anthony. What's up, Jeff?
It is the 18th of January of 2018.
Whoa.
If you're into numbers and stuff, that's kind of cool. Nothing. Everything's great, dude. Everything's awesome. Everything is awesome.
I concur, my friend. I just went, just a little while ago, I went running in the woods by my house. Probably ran about 4 miles, and it snowed here yesterday, so it was about 2 inches of snow on the ground, man. Absolutely beautiful. Like, trotting through the forest, like there's no footprints, nobody's been through there yet. Just clear as can be day, blue sky, just running, get into the zone, get that runner's high, and, let your mind, like, wander and fixate on good things. Good stuff, man.
For sure.
Been doing lots of yoga, too, this year. That was my... If I have a New Year's resolution, it was to like work on mobility, flexibility, and mobility. So I got the yoga thing happening again. I used to do lots and lots of yoga, kind of backed off a bit.
Yeah, I remember when you and your wife used to do the yoga retreats there in Costa Rica and stuff.
Yeah, I might get back into something like that. But yeah, we used to do yoga retreats. We'd bring groups down to Costa Rica and, rent out these really nice, incredible spas and resorts and stuff and hang out in the jungle with amazing, healthy people for a week at a time. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Met some cool people. I did get into Ashtanga, which is kind of like... I used to do CrossFit as well, too. And I see so many similarities between CrossFit and Ashtanga. They're both like these... exercise programs that just can totally consume you. Once you get on the workout of the day, the WOD for CrossFit, you get the cycle going, you get into it, and you start to reap the benefits. You don't want to stop it. Like, just takes over, and you just got to keep going. You got to stay on the program. Same thing with Ashtanga, man. People that do Ashtanga, like, it's if you don't know, Ashtanga is a particular style of yoga. It's a particular series of yoga, and it's the same practice, the same poses every time you do it, but people that get into that tend to be like fanatical. Just, I'm doing Ashtanga every single day. It becomes one of those things that just takes over.
Right, because they're trying to, I guess, improve, and knowing that you're doing the exact same movements, you get to kind of measure your growth pretty easily. I would assume.
It's not really about measuring your growth so much as it is like the program itself is really effective. And that's like for CrossFit, if you're into building endurance, strength, power, and just like becoming a well-rounded physical badass, like CrossFit is pretty fucking good. It's really hard on you. I mean, it can be really hard on you, but it's pretty good at shaping you up really quickly. And same thing with Ashtanga. It's just something about that particular exercise program just really like it's really effective, and they're addictive. Very few other things I've done physically are as addictive or as consuming, I guess, as Ashtanga or CrossFit. So,
I like how you rephrase from addictive to consuming. Few things I've done are as addictive. Well, consuming. Yeah. So anyway, that was funny. But as you were talking, you kind of sparked my memory with several things.
That's good.
Kind of topics we could jump off into. You were talking about hanging out with healthy people, and then you also said the program a few times, and it reminded me of this awesome program that I participated in with my son over the weekend. That was like a have the best 2018 kind of thing by this motivational kind of inspirational speaker guy named Kimmy Joseph, who's based out of Eugene here, and he said a lot of really interesting things, like to jump off, like something that I think you and I both are intrigued and interested in. He was talking about how human beings are the only animals that impose self-limitation, right? He's like, when you see a bird take off out of its nest or off of a branch, the bird always flaps its wings with everything it has, right? It's trying to fly as hard as it can.
No holding back.
no holding back. You know, a lion, a cougar, a tiger, they're going to attack their prey with everything they have. And yet humans, you know, we have this ability to limit ourselves. You know, his example was, you know, it's really gray here a lot, gray days. He was like, you know, you can wake up in the morning and look outside and be like, man, I really want to be my best today, but it's kind of gray and cold out there. So, yeah, maybe I won't do this thing I was going to do today. You know, and it sounds like a funny example, but it's so true. And then he said this other thing, and then I want you to comment on these two things because I know you have a lot to say too.
That's what I'm here for.
He said this other thing about hope. Like people say, oh, I hope this happens, or I hope I can do this thing. And he said this really awesome acronym for hope that I'd never heard before. And he said he says this to his clients. Well, I look at hope as an acronym, and it's humans overcoming problems every day. So I thought that was really poignant and a great way, and a great way to jump off with this podcast and talk about overcoming problems and having the best year you can, and you know, all the kind of things that we kind of are always kind of talking about in this podcast.
Hope, the acronym. Let's see, humans overcoming problems every day. Let's see here. That's probably one of the better definitions of hope, or the better functional uses of hope that I've heard. I tend to look at hope. I'm highly influenced by my friends with the Bwiti, the spiritual tradition that uses the shamanic plant medicine at Iboga. Like with their set of wisdom and knowledge, one of the things they talk about often is hope, and how they don't believe in hope. They don't believe in hope or faith. And the reason for that is because they feel very strongly that it requires, like, life is about action. It's about taking action. It's about taking control of your mind. It's about taking control of your life. It's about moving things in the direction that you want them to go versus hoping that they work out in a favorable way, which is kind of what your friend's saying.
Right. I think hope is like handing your power over to something else, something you perceive as bigger or greater than you. Or, yeah, like you always hear what's the term? Hope and pray. I can hope and pray that this thing is going to happen to me. Well, that's all great, but I think or I have no hope left. There's no hope for me. And if you use it as an acronym, then it's like, hey, just get out there and be human and overcome your problems. And then, like I said, it's really cool, the thing he said about self-limitation, because in the little seminar that he did, he was asking everybody, what is your goal in 2018? Like, what is the thing that you want to do the most? And it was funny because he knows me, so he specifically asked me, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to grow my reach, right? And he's like, what do you mean by that? I said, well, I'm an author, and I have this podcast, and I do this public speaking stuff and all this, and I'm wanting to grow and expand upon that. And he was like, okay, well, cool. Let's get into some of the exercises and stuff, and then we'll come back to that later. And, you know, just to briefly summarize, when he came back to me after the exercises, my realization was this is all already happening, right? Like our podcast is gaining traction right now. People in the seminar had seen me speaking at other events and walked up to me and were like, hey, I told so-and-so they should come talk to you because you're awesome. I saw you at this event that you were at. I was like, oh, yeah, I recognize you. And it made me – I had all these little confirmations that this was already happening and that maybe I need to just be more patient, right, which is another thing that I know you and I both try to strive to work on all the time is our patience.
Yeah. I mean, I'm watching these podcasts and thinking about my own personal evolution and personal growth and seeing how much I have to seeing where the work needs to be next. You know, and I was actually thinking about that when I was running, just kind of thinking about where is my personal growth at? Like where am I going from here? And in order to kind of find answers to that, I found myself looking back into the past and kind of thinking about where I was coming from. You know, where the biggest moments of personal growth came from. I want to get into that a little bit later, but you're talking about this guy. He's instructing you in a seminar, and it reminds me of something I was thinking about last week or so. We had talked in a previous episode about gurus and about phony those fraudsters and whatnot that sell you crap, that sell you gimmicks, that sell you the techniques that you just have to follow the techniques and keep doing and keep giving them money.
If it's not working, it's because you gotta make this you're not quite doing it the right way.
You're on your way to enlightenment, son. Just keep it up. Don't quit. You're doing the right thing. And write me another check and keep doing what you're doing.
Right.
But after we recorded that, I was thinking about this later. Like, there has been so many, quite a few, like, really important people that have entered my life that have acted as teachers, as masters, as instructors of martial arts or meditative practices or plant medicine practices or elders. And I really wanted to give credit to the masters and the teachers out there in this world, because it only takes, like, a person can walk into your life and appear into your life almost like randomly. It might feel like a synchronicity happening when you meet somebody, but a lot of times when you meet somebody like this, right away that they're going to change your life in a positive and meaningful and purposeful way. And that's happened to me so many times. And so hearing you talk about this guy, I'm like, did you find somebody else that's going to help you move down the path, man? Or
for sure. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I want to address that too. When we were saying all that, believe me, man, all of these people, and you just said change my life. What they really did is they inspired me to change my life, right? They had such an impact on me through their message, through their energy, through whatever it was. They left an impression upon me that inspired me to make the change in my own life, and
possibly also instructed you technically along the way too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right.
And absolutely, same as you. You paid to go to these martial arts classes. You pay to go get your butt kicked at jiu-jitsu, right? And but you're learning something about yourself. And absolutely, I don't want people to think that we're saying all this stuff should be free. That's not what we're saying at all. And I don't ever look back and think, man, I can't believe I paid $100 to do that ayahuasca ceremony or whatever. Do you know what I'm saying? The money was never even an issue. And if anything, in those types of experiences, it always seems so small, right? What you're paying for it. When something totally impacts you, it seems like, man, this guy, this girl, this person, this lady, they could be. I mean, it's kind of like when people give you something so valuable that's information. What's the price of that? It's priceless. So you can't afford that person technically, right? Like it's a funny way to think of it. But so I'm not trying to say, and I know you aren't either, and I'm glad you started to clarify some of this, but you should pay for awesome advice and inspiration. It has a value, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've paid, thinking about this, just crunching some numbers in my head as you're talking. I'm like, how much have I paid now? On things like martial arts schools, your monthly tuition, training, like testing fees, equipment, year after year after year. It took 5 or 6 years or something to reach, black belt level in Kung Fu. And now doing it all over.
Thousands of dollars.
Thousands of dollars on that. Now doing it again with starting from white belt, in jiu-jitsu, and then having done other schools in between. But also, some of this, I've done some Qigong training programs that have lasted over, a couple years linked in time, and it's, you're looking at hundreds something bucks a month plus herbs and different all kind of Chinese medicine gadgets and crap that you need, and then I start thinking, well, plant medicines, holy crap, man, I've spent a lot of money on putting myself in ceremony with the right people, and man, it's like the best money I've ever spent. But you're talking about a lot of money over a number of years' time to be in those spaces and be in ceremonies and be around elders and masters, just to, even if it's not a structured dynamic of them teaching you anything, just being in their presence and learning by being around true wisdom elders, man, it's priceless.
Too bad they can't give us our little bachelor's degree, right? That we could frame and put on our, look at all of my education I got from all these shamans and spiritual people. But it's funny.
You want to know what mine is? I have that. Mine's my smile. See, I feel like truly having a big happy smile is the merit badge you get from doing all that stuff.
Well, as you were saying all that, I started thinking about, I have a son in college. My wife and I went to university. Like it's you pay for that education, right? And the funny irony of that is, excuse me, I'm not even using I'm not technically using my college credentials or degree. I realized that it all grew my mind space and it grew me as a person and my motivation and initiative. But I'm not a practicing graphic designer, but at the same time, those are some of the best memories I have, and some of the biggest growth I did in my life was in college, right? And the same thing with the shamans and the ceremonies and all of that. That's some of the biggest growth and the most personal knowledge and personal growth that you'll ever pick up. And then I want you to speak on this, because here's another aspect of that I find really interesting. And I know this has happened to you as well. So at one point, you and I were both in Costa Rica, and we're paying to do these certain things, right? Ayahuasca ceremonies, different types of healing things that I was involved with and driving to every week. It's spending an hour drive each way, so gasoline and a couple $100 for this therapy thing that I was doing with this vitamin C treatments and all that stuff. And then what happened to you is the same thing that happened to me. You absorb so much of this information and you keep seeing these people so frequently that all of a sudden, what do? They invite you to come and do the stuff with them for no charge, right? And because they start seeing you as
the lineage.
I'm not going to say on right,
yeah,
not really on, right. Like they're wanting to hand down their information, or they see the same spark or the same light because you just keep showing up and you never bring up, hey man, this is kind of getting expensive here. If anything, you don't even consider it because you're eating it up so much that then, it's like going to the buffet and all of a sudden it's free. And they're like, yeah, I have all this wealth of knowledge and information here, and I want to share it with you because you've been so willing to be such a great
student.
Student, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's happened. That sort of turnaround has happened a few times. Once with a qigong instructor of mine, who's now, was an instructor of mine from the beginning level of his program for a couple of years, and then I graduated certain pieces of through certain pieces of the program, if you will, and ultimately now we're just really good friends, and I can call him up anytime and shoot the breeze with him and ask him this or that or get advice from him or vice versa. And that's happened with my my Shaolin Kung Fu instructor, the guy who spent a lot of time working with me and helping me to learn how to slow my mind down for Tai Chi, helping me to learn how to control my anger and direct it, properly. And it's also happened with the people that I work with in plant medicines in both of those circumstances. One thing I found interesting though is this has happened to me as well. Is that as I evolved, as I grew, I got to a point where overnight it just felt like I had outgrown the teachers. Like there's no more that these that certain people need to teach me. Like this path is I've soaked up, I've absorbed. Integrated everything I need from this person, and our relationship instantly changes. This can happen professionally as well, I've noticed.
Right. Well, and then it hurts a little bit too, because I had the same experience. I remember one time it hurt because this healer shaman that I was visiting and doing all this work with just told me, I don't want you to come here anymore. And I was like, why? I like coming here and talking with you. And he's like, I know, and that's why I don't want you to come anymore. Like, you are surpassing me, and you don't need this anymore. So by you coming here to me, it's just a way, like we were talking about in the beginning of the show, for you to self-limit because you believe that you're holding me on this pedestal, and I have nothing more to help you grow with. At this point, it's up to you to grow. And it was a really talk about a humble dude, number one. But it was also it was difficult, man, because I was like, am I being jilted here? Like, this was awesome. This was one of the things I looked forward to. But at the same time, he really taught me something great about myself at that moment. Well, maybe not at that moment, but as time proceeded, and then the other, sadly, issue is then I've also had the experience where you have these certain people that you meet when you first begin your journey, and then you go and you expand your journey, right? Beyond the, for example, like I met somebody one time and they had a certain practice that they did, and I'm not going to mention what it was because it doesn't matter. But they were so into their practice, all they did was focus on this one practice that they had, and they thought that that was the answer for everything, which is fine. And maybe for their world it is. But then I expanded my awareness to all these other things. And then a few years later, I saw this person again, and they seemed put off by some of the things I had experienced that they hadn't experienced. And I then went and I asked someone, actually the guy who told me stop coming to see me, why is this person treated me really weird, and why do you think that is? And he was like, because she wants to be seen as the expert, and now you've gone outside of her expertise and grown beyond, knowledge that she has. And it's intimidating isn't the right word, but it's
let me throw this
it's just
at
hard. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, an instructor. I was taking this very intense, very unique, sort of esoteric system of Qigong many years ago, and it triggered just like the most amazing personal transformations in my life. When I went to the first class, where it was just like an introduction, where the teacher would explain to us what it was about, I was sort of guided in there just by kind of following the universe. It felt like I was supposed to be there, and he said to everybody that's here, this practice is really challenging. It's really hard. Most people quit after the first week or so. But if you stick around with it for a year or two, it's going to change your life in seriously dramatic ways. And a lot of people find that the ways in which it changes their life aren't necessarily agreeable to them at first, because it throws a lot of things off. And he said it can throw off your relationships. It could throw off marriage that you've had. It could cause friendships to collapse, or girlfriend boyfriend relationships to completely collapse. In other words, it could completely turn your life upside down. Okay, so I went in, and after training for a year or so, one of the other instructors, I remember he explained it to me like this, and I've done some research into this, and I've had a hard time finding any information to really back it up or find out who posited this theory. But he called it breaking of role locks, and the way he explained it to me was that when you meet somebody, the first time you meet somebody, whoever it is, wherever it is, whether it's in a work setting, personal, whatever, when you first look somebody in the eye, shake their hand or whatever, and ask them who they are, or explain your name or something metaphysically, energetically happens between the two of you in that very instant. So within a very, very short amount of time, you're talking seconds, there's already like a pecking order, like like roles are already established. Where do these people fit in? Like if it's in a professional environment, you go to the CEO to interview for a job, and as soon as you meet him, that order is already established. He's the boss in the relationship that you are going to establish and build. He's going to be the boss in that relationship. You'll be the subordinate. If you're out and about town, out in a bar at night, and you meet a pretty girl, that relationship is going to be established on, the two of you longing for whatever type of relationship you're looking for. And so what he said was this practice, over time, it completely changes your energetic body. And that sounds like woo-woo stuff to some people, but if you haven't done it, then just maybe shut the fuck up about it. I don't know, give it a chance, because there's a lot of interesting mysteries in this world that don't make a lot of sense until you experience them firsthand. And that happened after a year or so into this practice. Totally right. Everything changed. My relationship with my wife changed. In our case, it changed for the better. My relationship with my employer and my mentor just completely crashed and collapsed. And it was like going into my boss's office after 7 years of being his understudy. And it was like looking into the eyes of the same guy and realizing that all of a sudden he was uncomfortable around me because something had changed so greatly in me. I no longer needed his guidance or his leadership or his mentorship. And he was uncomfortable around me. My other boss was totally uncomfortable around me. And other people with other relationships I had just totally couldn't be around me in the same way, because something in me had changed and the locks of our roles had been completely shattered. And that doesn't happen too often.
Yeah, it's funny you said that. As you were talking about that, here's an analogy I would use just so everybody can understand what we're talking about. In your life, you've read books, right? When you were 22, 24, 26. You read these books, right? And 10 years, 20 years goes by, and you pick up that book again, and you're 42. And you reread this book that you were like, oh man, this book was so great. I remember reading this in my 20s, but I don't remember the details of this book. And you reread it, and you totally excavate completely different material from the book than what you did when you were 22, right? And I think that's kind of what you're touching on. And it's been a funny experience in my life that I've undergone all of these physical changes, and it's really funny. I have one friend left in my life that knew me before all this stuff happened to me in the military, and then I was, disabled, or other abled, or alter abled, or whatever you want to call it. Okay. So, and I often would feel sorry for myself or feel sad. Like, why can't these people just accept me for who I am now? Why is it so hard for them to see me this way now? Because they knew me in a different way before, as this physical, fun-loving, up for anything kind of guy. I'm still fun-loving. I'm still up for anything. I just can't do the physical part, right? And I think for guys, especially, it's really hard to accept. Number one, it's hard to accept help. Something I've had to learn. Number two, it's hard to accept weakness or failure, right? And maybe they perceive me as a failure or weak because I physically couldn't do things. I don't know. I'm not trying to jump into their heads. I'm just saying I've been down that path of losing your friends that you grew up with your whole life because they just couldn't deal with something that physically happened to you. And then on the flip side, I had all these friends that I like to smoke a lot of dope with and drink a lot of beer with at the beach and all this stuff and in Costa Rica. And when I started going down this major spiritual change, and I realized that I wanted more, I wanted something different, I wanted to expand my reach and all the things that we've been talking about, and write a book and motivate and inspire people. I lost a lot of those friends too, man, because they weren't going in the direction I was going. They weren't evolving in the way I was evolving. And it was just too, we saw things too differently. And that's a big thing that people have to realize when you start a spiritual practice or a physical practice, right? Even if it's just like, hey, I'm going to stop chugging beers and eating pizza every Wednesday with the boys, and I'm going to start working out this year. Some of those dudes might not be your friends anymore, because, Jeff's all getting it now. He looks good, and I'm feel intimidated by that. So there's all these different things that can happen and will happen. And I feel like it's just a part of the growing. I've had it on a physical level, and then I've had it on a spiritual level. And, and I'm sure people have it on a mental level and all kinds of things. So it is something that you have to be aware of before as you jump off into your thing, that everything's going to change. It absolutely will. And it's all necessary. It's probably for the better.
Yeah. You mentioned books and I was like, I was thinking about that today when I was jogging through this lovely woods, snow-covered woods, little bunnies and crap jumping around and freaking snowbirds and stuff, man. Just idyllic, beautiful scene. And I was going through my head. I was like, okay, so where am I at personally? Where am I going? Because, if you've listened to any other podcasts, especially the ones from the end of the year, you could tell I was kind of like, shit's not really going the way I wanted or thought it should go. So I started thinking about them back on my own personal journey, and I was like, okay, when have I experienced the greatest moments of growth, right? Like what has been happening? Like when in my life have like the biggest changes come? And the first one, I thought of four. I thought of four areas, Mr. Jeff, and I'm going to tell you what those are. The first one I thought of was when my just sort of like this inherent curiosity for knowledge just kind of welled up in me. And so I started just getting really interested in books, and I didn't read that much when I was a kid, not that much when I was in high school or anything like that. And so I was in the college years at this time, and I just got really into books. And I started off with history. I remember reading about Joseph Stalin, and that kind of really led to my the first steps of my political awakening. But then I stumbled upon Carlos Castaneda. And
yeah, one of my favorites.
Yeah, and it was kind of like, at the time, it seemed to speak to all of these questions and curiosities I had about life and myself and the meaning of it all. Because here you are, going through, following the routines, going through all the steps. Okay, I did the high school thing, right? I'm supposed to do the college thing. Okay, I'm supposed to get a degree. I'm supposed to get a job. And I look around everybody, and everybody's hustling. Everybody hates their jobs. Like, so you're growing up into this world and figuring out that there's definitely like a path you're supposed to take, but there's also a lot of stuff going on that isn't being talked about. And Carlos Castaneda really spoke to me when I read. So I blazed through like all his books, but got what I could out of him, learned what I needed to learn out of him, got inspired in the right ways from him, and then I've tried to read them again in recent years, and I'm flipping through the pages, and I'm just like, man, it's not.
This is convoluted, man.
It's not doing it for me, man. Like, I know too much, right? Like, this is
right.
It's, I don't know, man. Maybe you've read all the books, but they're really interesting. They're really fascinating, but it's like one giant tease. It's like this lengthy. Right. It's. I don't know, man. It's this long
story.
Yeah, it's this never-ending tease, this never-ending, we're almost gonna get you to that secret, we're almost gonna reveal.
Right.
Just keep reading, we'll reveal the secret to you on page 357 or whatever it is.
And then he passed away a few years ago while we were both living in Costa Rica, and then all this stuff came out about him and all this funny information. So, which just goes to show you nobody holds all the answers anyway, because he never got to the point, really. There was no big payoff in the end. It was just like, hey, here's this other book, and then you're like, is he just trying to sell me like 20 books?
It started to get really weird, and I know that some people can get it, and I've been far enough out there on psychedelics or whatever that I can relate to it. And
right,
like his later books get into this weird, like these organic beings that are like cosmic sponges and just weird, crazy worlds, and in a way I kind of understand it, but maybe I'm just not ready for it, and if that's the case, that's fine. That's fine too.
You just gotta redesign. You gotta redesign your reality, Dylan.
Man, you drop that every show, man. Thank you for that. So that's like an Idiocracy when the guy keeps saying Carl's Jr. and the guy's like, why the fuck do you keep saying Carl's Jr.? And he's like, because I get paid every time I say it, dumbass.
Carl's Jr.
Carl's
That's
Jr.
awesome.
But
dude, that movie, that's a great movie.
Yeah, you could talk on that. That's a whole nother show in itself. But the second thing I was thinking about when I was jogging through the snow, and it was cold enough today. It was like 15 degrees when you're jogging through the snow that the snow doesn't melt on your shoes, so your toes don't get wet. I thought that was pretty awesome. Second moment, I like my curiosity for knowledge. I think that's just innate. That's human, and if that gets flipped off and turned off by if that gets turned off by watching too much Scooby-Doo on TV and like taking in too much mainstream news, then that's a shame. But I think everybody has that innate curiosity. And so books, reading books, Carlos Castaneda, reading books about metaphysics, Carl Jung, lots of those stories.
Cosmic Wizard.
If I'd have had it back then, it would have filled in a lot of things. But it's right up there with like the Dan Millman books, and the Way of the Peaceful Warrior, and so many other good ones. But second, that really sent me on the path of personal transformation, like waking up, right? This process of awakening. The second thing I was thinking about today was when I really dedicated to myself to like physical and metaphysical practices, and that's as simple as finding an instructor or finding a method and applying that method and knowing that you're going to get results. If we talked about this in other shows, knowing, basically expecting results because you're going to do the work to get those results.
Right.
And so with something as sensitive as Qigong, for example, where you're working with the energy body, where it's a combination of physical movements plus mental meditations, visualizations, and everything, where you're trying to achieve a specific energetic result within your body. I mean, you have to really just commit. Okay, well, I don't feel like I got there today, but I'm going to do it again tomorrow. And so when I went through that process with martial arts and Tai Chi and Qigong, then things really, really started to change. That's when the relationship started to change, and the locks I had with old friends and stuff seemed to just come loose, and you really got to figure out pretty quickly who you were supposed to be around, And,
and then also some of your friendships deepen though too, right? Like you were saying, you start figuring out who you're supposed to be around, and you start to make these little subtle changes, because it is subtle in the beginning, like when I know when you look back on your experience, the same as I do, I didn't turn into this yesterday, right? It took the last 10, 15 years of thought, and the same thing happened for me. It's funny listening to you talk about it. I think the first thing you do is you seek out information, right? You seek out higher knowledge, right? And so same thing, dude. I began reading Carlos Castaneda, Dr. Wayne Dyer, the Tao. I'm way into the Tao, right? And practicing the Tao and doing the daily meditation and meditation, right? And then I got into shamanism and journeying and doing that every day. And it's just so funny when you discipline yourself to start. So let me roll back. You start out with the information, right? And I have this funny thing that I like to say to people. You have this thing in your mind, it's called knowing, and you believe that to be knowledge, and that knowledge is the key. Well, knowledge is nothing without wisdom. Wisdom is when you take this knowledge up here and you push it down into your gut, you digest it, and then you act from your gut, right? You act from your wisdom that you gained through this knowledge that's available to everybody. But people all the time say, oh yeah, Jeff or Dylan said this thing in that podcast. I know that. Yeah, but are you doing it? Right? So that was something that became very apparent to me, because when I started going through the phases and getting into the spiritual practice, right, which came after the onslaught of information, was the shamanism, right? So the shaman's like, have you been doing, hey, that was great what you showed me, that journeying thing, and, meeting my spirit guides and the elders and all that. That was all awesome. But now I want to do this thing. Well, have you been doing the journeying? Have you been doing the exercises I told you to do? Well, no, because I want to get onto this other thing. Well, because you're trying to jump to the next thing is why you're never going to get there. You have to go back and do the practice. And that's the stuff you're touching on as number 2. So now I want to hear number 3, because I kind of have a feeling of that I'll probably have something to say about that.
Let's play a game, Jeff. What if you had to guess?
What's number 3?
So the number 3 would be like the 3 moments, periods in my life where like great personal transformation, great personal growth came from. What's number 3, Jeff? Tell us.
I have no idea what number 3 is. I thought you were going to say it was that your great personal transformation and growth came. I thought you were about to say what periods of time those came in.
Well, like I said, like I felt like super big changes came when I opened up to my curiosity for knowledge, and started diving into the wisdom books and all kind of history and everything. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That set me off on a course. Then finding finding martial arts and diving into that practice and not giving up and doing it day in and day out led to some just amazingly transformative experiences, both mentally, spiritually, and metaphysically. And then I was thinking, like, what was another time? Another time in my life came when I felt powerful enough, when I felt like me enough to take risks, to take huge risks with my life. And the risks that I took were totally upending my entire life in Austin, abandoning my career that had been, career in video games for like 10 years, saying, hey, this isn't really what I want to be doing, or there's something else I wanted to experience in life, and it's not here, it's not happening with what's going on now. So when I was able to be open enough and give myself the freedom enough to take the risks to try these things, that's what ultimately ended up and put me out of the context that I grew up in. Born and raised in Austin, Texas, lived there for 32 years. It's a long time. So I was still hanging out with people that I knew in high school and and all the guys that I'd got in trouble with and gone down the wrong paths with, and finally decided, okay, I'm going to sell the house, everything, and get out of Dodge, and took some major risks to get out of there. And ultimately, within a year, I ended up in Costa Rica with no career. Right? So,
I always think it's funny when you say, or anyone says, and the people I went down the wrong path with, maybe it was the right path because that path led you to this path. So,
well, I mean, the implied wisdom there is that I know that I had to get off that path in order to get where I'm at. Like if I was on that path still, like I'd be all cracked out with, meth teeth and
literally cracked out.
Like just who knows, man? Who knows where it goes? But I mean, some of the guys I know that hang out, awesome people, but man, I've seen, what certain lifestyles can do to people, and
sadly I have too, that. So
sadly, like the hard charging, hard partying lifestyle isn't good for your health. It's not good for your emotional health. And I know very few people who have stayed in the party scene since, being young enough to be in the party scene and like have lives that they feel really, really good about,
Right. So, or we're still ticking on all cylinders up in the old brain box too, right? Like I've seen a lot of that too, sadly. But
usually it manifests in the common malaises like anxiety, depression, just panic attacks and all that kind of shit. I mean, just wrecks your mental health. But yeah, that was number 3, like the willingness to take the risks involved with taking control of my life, I guess is a good way to say that,
Right. Because it's all risk versus reward, right? And so many people are afraid. It's good to get all snuggled up, You're talking about the snow, and it probably would have been nice to just like eat some warm oatmeal and like build a fire in the fireplace and hang out with a blanket. I know the kids are out of school because it's a snow day. But dude, you went out there and like, okay, my toes are going to be numb because I'm going to go running, maybe not wet, but numb from running in the snow, and got outside of the easy, comfortable thing to do and pushed yourself to do this thing that and I could see it all over you. I mean, yeah, you're glowy. Maybe it's the lighting.
I'm a little pasty. Like there's not enough. I haven't got enough sun this time of year. But
yeah.
But man, I tell you, man, 2018. So far, it's off to a good start. I've got the diet dialed in. I'm 2 weeks into the diet. I feel really good. Like my energy level is up leveling, and
yes.
That's a good thing, man. So I'm on the right supplements. I'm on the right. I'm drinking lots of water, doing yoga. I mean, so anyways, it's awesome. It's fucking awesome.
It is awesome.
It's good to feel good, man.
Like I said in the beginning of the show, everything is awesome, and it does feel good. But sometimes, like as I mentioned to you before the show, sometimes you have to go through you got to get beat up a little bit to get better. Like I'm still doing my Candida cleanse thing, and yesterday was a rough day, man. I had some appointments and plans of things I was going to do, and I just couldn't do it. I was having such I guess it's die-off symptoms, and I just couldn't physically drag myself to the appointment that I had, so I had to cancel. And but it's great because I rested, and here I am doing the show with you, and I feel great today. I feel great.
Sweet.
I mean, I feel mentally clear.
Yeah, baby.
I feel lighter, if you know what I mean. And it's all a process, but sometimes you got to dig down, and you got to get dirty. You got to do the dirty work, as they say, and put in the effort and put in the time and put in the practice, to get to where you want to go. And I know it's all going to pay off, right? And I think too, once you do put so much effort into something, at least for me personally, it's hard to just jump right back into, man, let's eat some pizza and drink some beers. I'm off that Candida cleanse. Heck no, dude. You do so much work getting yourself back on track health wise that it's easier to sustain.
Yeah, it's a snowballing kind of thing, man. Like if you're not there yet and you're still chugging sodas every day and you stop that, like just wait a month and see how shitty a soda makes you feel. I do feel like we've talked about that.
Yeah.
Shall I jump into number 4? Mr. Jeff?
Please. I thought there was only 3. There's like David Letterman now. We got like the top 10.
Top 10. Yeah, I'm going to get some celebrities in here to count down for us.
There you go.
Was thinking about this because, I'm out there, I'm jogging, crisp air, feels good. I've got my sweatshirt on and my hat, and I ran back up to the house and my neighbor's like, you look like Rocky. And I was like, fuck, man, I feel like Rocky. Dude, you're right. Good feeling. But I was thinking about this like 4 times in my life where just like expansive personal growth has come. Opening up to curiosity and knowledge. Checking my notes here. Dedicating myself to the practices. Allowing myself to take risks in order to get control of my life and my own destiny, whatever. And the 4th one, things really started to get cosmic when I started to, it wasn't like I tried, but I just automatically allowed myself to go where the universe was telling me to go, right? So allow myself to accept that just accidentally or just naturally accepted the direction of the universe, meaning that I didn't plan for things to turn out a certain way. I had no idea what I was getting myself into with certain things, and ultimately it led to massive personal growth. I think the tie into that really is the concept of letting go. We talked about that before. We talk so fucking much, man. My wife is just like, Jesus. You guys talk
to that guy all the
time. Talk. And it's true. It's true. I was listening to some other podcasts recently, and I was like, man, I'm not the only one who can talk this much. It's good to know.
No, absolutely not.
But I think go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'll let you jump in there.
We talked so much, we both said go ahead at the same jinx. Yeah. No, I agree with you. It is the practice, the knowledge, and then letting go ultimately is training you to not, grasp on to some concept or idea of who you are. And I think that's something that I wanted to mention as I was talking about going to the seminar this weekend is I think sometimes we get to a point with some of this stuff, you and I both, where you feel like, man, I'm maxed out on this. I'm topped out on these seminars or this information, and I don't really need to take in any more of this information, and I'm an expert on this. And then, I don't know, man, like really, I went to this thing over the weekend because I wanted to help my 19-year-old son, because I realized, hey, this guy, Kimmy Joseph, is saying the same things that I say to my son, but it's a different package, right? It's the same message, different package, different delivery, right? Especially with the fact that he's, Kimmy's closer to my son's age than I am. He's freaking 12 years younger than me, right? And so my son's 19, Kimmy's 30, right? Or 13 years younger than me. So he's way closer to Dagon's age, and he's got the giant dreadlocks, and he looks cool, and he's all talking about hip hop and rap and all this stuff, which I love too. But I'm also Dagon, my son Dagon's dad, right? So I thought, I'm going to go to this thing because it's really going to help him, and I want him to hear the message with a different delivery and a different package. And then as I'm there, I'm realizing that I absolutely needed to hear some of the stuff he said. Like I said, the hope thing, and the thing about self-limitation, and he said a bunch of other awesome things too. And it made me realize that I have been stagnant, right? I've been closed off because I think, well, I do this work and I've done this work, and I don't need to continue to seek out others to give me information. And that's what's so funny is I wasn't seeking it. I was trying to guide. I was trying to use guidance to guide someone that I love and care about dearly to some information. And then I found myself getting waylaid by the same information, which was it's an amazing thing. And it's another great lesson. Yes, there are many lessons to be had. Thinking about what you were saying there, kind of made me think about all this stuff I just said, these 4 different things, these 4 different moments of growth. Well, what's next, right? What happens next? Where does it go from here? Where's the 5th
area of growth. It's kind of what you're saying. What I think it is it's integration. It's taking everything that you know and putting it all together and using that integration to bust through your limitations. Because I think you said that earlier in this very show. Humans are the only creatures that actually put self-imposed limitations on themselves. And so yeah, that's where I'm going, bro. Integration, 2018, man.
Well, and then that's the whole thing I was talking about too, where you take this knowledge and this knowing that you have and you push it down and you start living from your gut and your heart, right? And all of a sudden the wisdom, right? You become the soothsayer, the person that imparts the wisdom, the wise sage. And that was also interesting to me while I was at the seminar. Several people at the seminar had seen me at some other events where I was speaking, and they recommended to people in the seminar to come and talk to me. And it was a really neat experience because I try to be a very humble person, and I was there to gain knowledge from someone else and to try to guide my son to something, like I said. And Kimmy, the presenter, is over here talking to my son, and I'm just hanging back, waiting for them to be done. And Dagan and Kimmy stopped talking to each other, and I was like, "Hey, yo, bro, I really appreciate it. That was really awesome information. Thanks for sharing your stuff with us, and I really enjoyed it. It was a great time." And then I turned around, and there was a couple of ladies behind me, and I was like, "Oh, hey, I was just trying to say goodbye to him. If you want to talk to Kimmy, I'm done." And they looked at me and they're like, no, actually, we wanted to talk to you. And I was like, really? And they're like, yeah, somebody told us you wrote a book, and they did some, counseling stuff with you. And we were curious if you could do that with some clients that we have. And I was just like, it was really funny because, like I said, I had said in the beginning of the meeting that I wanted to grow my reach, and then realized that these things are already happening, that I need to be more patient. And then in the exact same meeting, right, in the exact same seminar, two people walk up to me afterwards and they're like, "Hey, can I have your information? And I want to know more about your book and what kind of services you offer." And it just reinforced to me the thing that happened during the little workshop, which was, hey, it's already happening. Just be patient, right? And the evidence was right there immediately. It's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, patience really pays off for people who do the work too, So, the fact that you're having these interactions and these people come up to you is just, it's not like magic that they were there. It's because of seeds that you planted and things that you had done prior to that. So, I mean, developing yourself is about planting seeds, and then the cool part is you get to be impressed with yourself or surprised or amazed when you realize that these things have turned into little buds or plants, or they're growing
right.
flowers. These things are paying off. And so looking back, like I was saying, this whole like number 4 there, that concept of accepting what the universe is offering, right? I mean, that was a big one for me. And I think like the major context that I associate with that is I found myself in Costa Rica, expat, moved down to Costa Rica with my wife and 2 small children. Totally gave up my career and no plans, very little money in the bank. Just like, hey man, we're going to see what happens. And what happened was a couple of people had planted seeds in my mind of this thing called shamanism. I had no idea what it was. This stuff called ayahuasca, I had no idea what it was. And all of a sudden I had the opportunity to do it. It sort of fell in my lap, and I hadn't read anything about it, didn't understand anything, didn't know anything, didn't read the internet, didn't see any documentaries on it or anything. But the universe was like, you need to go do this. And I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And ultimately that put me on a course for the next 6 years or so of just, incredible healing, incredible personal transformation and whatnot. But the seeds for all of that experience, right? They were all there. I had planted all that stuff already. I had already, distanced myself from the things and the people and the relationships and the work environments and all this kind of crap that was slowing me down, that was holding me back. I had already learned to take risks. I had already, jumped through the door a few times when doors, things had opened and come my way. I had already taught myself how to focus and discipline my mind and body together, right? And so here I was confronted with the opportunity to go step into these, really cosmic, magical worlds with, trained shamanic masters from the Amazon. And, it led to some amazing things. I've been able to go down to the Amazon and visit places, remote places in the jungle there that you couldn't, like tourists can't even go. Like you have to know people and be invited to be part of, visitors with certain tribes to visit their sacred ancestral lands and whatnot. And so just amazing opportunities like that opened up through the willingness to be like, okay, cool. Well, here's where I'm at in my growth. And I don't have all the answers right now, but I've been planting seeds along the way. So I'm going to open myself up to what comes my way. Right.
Right. And it's interesting too. I think, this, my whole ayahuasca journey happened because we were getting ready to go on a vacation back to the States to visit family, and you guys were out of town, and we're like, hey, y'all should stay at our house. And I'm sleeping in your bed, and there's this book on your nightstand called Cosmic Serpent. And it was all about
Jeremy
ayahuasca.
Narby.
Yeah, Jeremy Narby. And I ripped through, I think we stayed there 2 nights, right? Like we drove up because, back then the highway was crap and it took all day to drive up to y'all's house. So we spent the one night and then we hung out for a day and then we spent another night and flew out the next morning. So I think in those 2 nights I'd read like at least almost half of the book. And
Right.
It was really funny because we go to the States where ayahuasca is on nobody's radar. I mean, that. It was so hard to find any information about any of this stuff. This is like
2010. Yeah.
Was it? Maybe even 2009, I'm thinking. Yeah. It was when you okay. So we go to the States and we're in Dallas of all places, right? And Aaron's going to this half price books because Aaron and I at the time were just like way into reading. We had no TV. We're in the jungle. There's nothing to do. We books. And we're trying to get our kids to read all the time, right? So Aaron walks in and she said it was the weirdest thing. She's in the kids section of half price books. And right before she'd walked in, I said, hey, you should take a look and see if you can find that Cosmic Serpent book for me while you're in there. And she's like, yeah, right. Like, that's not going to be in this half price books. And then she says she goes in the kids section and she's looking at all these kids books and she has this feeling in the back of her head, like something tapping her almost. Like, the feeling you get like when you're like, somebody's staring at me, and then you turn around and somebody's staring at you. She's like, I turn around and right there, facing out, and not in the shelf, but facing out where the cover is, in the kids section, is Cosmic Serpent by Jeremy Narby.
Just a rogue copy just sitting there, huh?
Right. In the wrong place. Somebody probably picked it up and then just set it down or whatever, But Aaron was like, it was on display. It was like, oh, one of those moments, right? And she bought the book and then she brought it home, and I took it back to Costa Rica, read the whole book. Then I started doing some research online about ayahuasca and where maybe I could find it and do it in Costa Rica. And then out of the blue, I'm on a road trip to one of the shops that I was talking about. I used to go see like every week. And I asked the dude that's carpooling with me, hey, bro, you know anything about ayahuasca? And he kind of was like, why are you asking me about that? What do you know? And so I started telling him all the stuff I knew for the book I had read and that I was interested in doing it. And that was on a Sunday because we always went on Sunday. And Monday morning, he called me and he said, all right, dude, you need to start fasting now and drink a bunch of smoothies and fruit and like no more solid food because this Friday, bro, my house ayahuasca ceremony. And I was just, it was one of those things we talked about in some of the other podcasts too, where I didn't have the opportunity to say no. He'd already set all this stuff up. And I was like, oh my God, I don't really want to, I don't know if I'm ready. That was alleviated and eliminated for me. It was like, this is happening. And it did. And it was a mind blower and a total shift in my life, and it's really interesting how when you, pun intended, you find the book and you crack it open, all of a sudden the path that it leads down, right?
Yeah, in the very beginning of this, I mentioned that sometimes like the right person comes into your life, if only for a very short while, just to like give you a nudge, give you a certain piece of information or a little bit of inspiration or just something that you needed to hear that you didn't know you needed to hear. And that fills in some gaps. That sends you where you need to be. So it's like that with that book too, Cosmic Serpent. I mean, like the little synchronicities and information that gets put in front of your face when you're being led by the universe down the path you're supposed to be going. It's pretty sick, dude. It's pretty amazing. So, but at the same time though, it's also you find yourself. I mean, life isn't anything but constant, right? You find yourself in these zones sometimes where things are just working out in cosmic ways, are going certain well, and then you find yourself like, we were talking about in podcasts last month where things just you feel like you're beating your head against the wall trying to get through this life, right?
Right.
And so,
well, and then it's funny too. You've said cosmic, I think, about 10 times at this podcast, and then we're talking about a book called Cosmic Serpent, and that book led me to write a book, and it's called Cosmic Wizard, and it's all about trying to share knowledge and inspiration to people off of the experiences that I had from ayahuasca and other shamanic ceremonies and things like that, and man, it's just really interesting how it all jumps off and leapfrogs off of each other. It's cosmic.
Yeah, especially if you're paying attention, you're open to it. But yeah, that's a good stopping place, man. Let's wrap it up right here. Let me say this to the people out there. Thank you for tuning in and listening. You can check it all out, redesigningsereality.com. Let's see here, wakingtimes.com, some of my work. Journey to innersage.com. That's Jeff's website with his old personal positive mojo about his book. His book is called Cosmic Wizard, A Journey from Outer Rage to Inner Sage. What am I missing, Jeff?
Not much. You can check us all out on Instagram and Facebook as well. And, of course, we're on YouTube, Redesigning Reality. And, yeah, seriously, man, it's very motivating and it's very inspiring to see all the people and the subscribers and the views, and it's slowly gaining traction, and it's awesome. It feels great.
Amen, brother. It's a snowball, and there's 2 inches of snow outside of my house. I think maybe I'll take one of the little ragamuffins out and tote him around in the sled for a little bit. But that's it. Namaste to all you fine folks. Peace. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Out.
Right on. We'll do better next time. Peace.
Always. What is it? 1% better every day. It's good enough for me. Peace.
10% happier.
All right. Peace.
Later.
You've been listening to Redesigning Reality with Jeff Anthony and Dylan Charles.
Mukabaya, mukabaya.